Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to this webinar jointly organized by the European AIDS Treatment Group and EUPATI, the European Patients Academy for Therapeutic Innovation. And today we will have two speakers. I will introduce them to you within a short while. And we would like to start today, or we have this webinar rather today, I'm sorry, in order to explain to you a little more how and why you can use the EUPATI Toolbox on medicine development for patient education and patient community education purposes. And also you will hear a couple of practical examples from our second speaker about how the EUPATI Toolbox and the methodologies described in the EUPATI Toolbox can be used in practice for patient education and for community capacity building for various patient communities. Our first speaker will be Matthew May, who is the current project lead for EUPATI. Matthew previously worked with DIA and within the EUPATI project for the whole duration of the project, and now in this second phase of the EUPATI project he's with EPF, the European Patients Forum, and he is the responsible project lead for the whole project, and he takes care of the IT aspects and also takes care of the coordination of the entire project. And our second speaker will be Giulio Maria Corbelli from Italy. Giulio is the chair of the European Community Advisory Board, which is the EATG's scientific working group. And Giulio will speak about the practical examples and benefits and possibilities of using EUPATI methodologies and the EUPATI Toolbox. Giulio has been a scientific writer in Italy and in Italian for his own patient group, and also he has been representing the EATG and ECAB at several functions and conferences for many years now. First of all, in case you have any questions, please use the questions box on the bottom of your control panel, or raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button so that we know if you would like to say something. We will take questions and answers at the end rather than during the presentation, unless you have something really pressing and urgent to discuss. And I will be monitoring your questions during the session, so no worries, I will try to answer quickly everything that you type into the question box. So I suggest that Matthew, you start with your presentation and take it away.
Thank you very much, Tomasz. Good evening to everyone, or good afternoon to you if you're an hour or two behind me. As Tomasz says, my name is Matthew May, and I'm currently the program coordinator of EUPATI. And I'm very happy to show you what we have in the EUPATI Toolbox. It's something that's very near and dear and close to my heart. As Tomasz said, I used to work for DIA within the EUPATI project when it was an IMI project, and my role at that time was as content development lead, and so I've had a finger in developing a lot of the content that's ended up on this website, and eventually also within the running of the website, something I keep doing today. So if you find something that doesn't work, I don't really want to know about it. It's a headache for me, but please do write to us and we can do our best to fix it. So to start with what we have, I mean, European Patients Academy has developed two different areas of content. One you might have heard about is a patient expert training course. That's an invite-only course that you can apply for approximately every year and runs over about a 14-month period. All of that content is more or less available within the EUPATI Toolbox. And unlike the course where you learn in a linear manner, starting from module 1 through 6, you can go into the toolbox at any stage of the medicine's development process and pull out information that's relevant to you. And also what's key here is that we're talking about having it in multiple different languages. So in order to get started for using the toolbox and to see what's available, I thought I'd give it a run through for you hopefully show you with my well-practiced eye where you can find different things. I do apologize in advance. There's an awful lot of content on our website, and maybe it's not always the most easy to find for some people, in the same way that some people prefer iPhones over Android and Android over iPhones. It's just different ways of looking at things. So when you log on to the EUPATI website is simply www.eupati.eu. I'm sure Tamas can send you the link after the webinar so that you can have that. We're also searchable and findable through Google. Any combination of European Patients Academy or EUPATI slightly misspelled should land you on our website. And the first thing you should notice in the top right-hand corner of the page is all the different languages that EUPATI is currently available in. And I also have to mention we've got a couple of other languages on their way. Danish, Romanian, and Portuguese are all in the works, with Danish coming online hopefully by the end of the month. But looking at my workload, it's going to be more like December, but definitely by the end of the year. And one thing I have to say, though, is some pages you'll find not all of these languages are available. And that's not entirely because we don't have the content in that language. It's often because the language in question is still in some level of review. And so it might be worth checking back later or simply writing a message to EUPATI via one of the email addresses or via social media just to ask if that content is going to be available soon in the language that you're looking for. So do bear that in mind. Unfortunately, it is not a easy process to manage the parallel translation of multiple languages for our content. So on with what you'll actually find here. Simple menu across the top. Key areas in terms of resources are the glossary. The glossary feature has that any words found in the glossary will highlight themselves in our text throughout our website. I'll be showing you an example of that later. But you can also click on it to simply have a look in and also search directly within the glossary. So the idea of our glossary is it contains about 300 terms at this point, including acronyms, which relate to medicine's development. So the key here is EUPATI focuses on medicine's development, the process thereof, and not purely on patient advocacy or patient activism. So we're more focused on the processes involved in medicine's R&D, but also what role patients can play in that process. So as you can see, I mean, the glossary simply provides you an explanation on the page. You can click on the terms for a little bit more information, and sometimes you'll also see how glossary terms relate to each other. You can always return home, clicking on our lovely home button, or on the logo in the top left-hand corner. I'll show you what the smaller items are on the website, if we dare call them smaller items before focusing on the toolbox. You'll find, as we scroll down, new information or new resources that's been made available. We run an active webinar series throughout the year, and you can find all of those on our page. Regular news appears on our front page. And you'll also find information on, for example, guidance documents that we published in December last year, which are now going forward to be published in peer-reviewed material. EUPATI exists on not just a European level, but also on a national level. We've already established ourselves with the EUPATI model, that's to say the public-private partnership that we have between patient organizations, pharmaceutical industry, academia, and non-profits, and arguably also the regulators and HTA bodies on a European level. It's also been modeled at a national level in some countries. And you can find out information by simply visiting the EUPATI in your country section, either via the menu at the top or by scrolling down the page and clicking on one of the options if you so choose. So if we clicked on EUPATI Germany, we would end up on the EUPATI Deutschland page. And that's then typically in the language of that country, and there's information on how to get in touch with the people involved in EUPATI for that specific country, and often they also have a dedicated social media stream as well. And so they'll always be dealing with issues directly on a national level, and also will be going through the process of adapting some of the content that we have on a European level. So obviously when we're talking about things, for example, within a regulatory field or an HTA environment, we do have to focus on what EMA are doing and what the European regulations say. but the national platforms will then have the opportunity and are slowly moving towards translating that into the framework of the national legislation. We always try to pull out something for the Toolbox focus on a monthly or so basis. We'll be talking more about these mini course starter kits a little bit later. If you are interested in the information that we produce and also on future updates, whether that be information on new languages that comes, webinars that we're running, opportunities for when the new course runs, do drop your email address in our subscription form. We'll only use it to send you information about EUPATI. And we also have some information about how you can go about adapting the toolbox. And that's also a little bit of what Julio's going to be talking about later, of what experience has happened within EATG for using content found in the EUPATI toolbox. So before we get on to the toolbox, I also just want to highlight a couple of things here in our menu. The EUPATI guidances can be viewed under EUPATI guidance, and there are 4 of these. Therefore, patient involvement in industry, patient involvement in HTA, patient involvement in regulatory processes, patient involvement in ethics. And these are web searchable versions of PDFs you might have seen already floating around the internet. And you can also download under attachments the full PDF version. And we have also conducted a webinar on each of our guidances by this point, which we've been doing throughout 2017, explaining the rationale of how the guidance was developed and also speaking to some of the key people who were involved in the development of the guidances. We deal with issues like compensation, how you go about defining interaction, talking about transparency. Many of these things will be subjects that you already know much about if you've been involved in patient involvement, patient advocacy for a long time. But if you're at the beginning of your experience in the area, it may be useful to take a look over this and also reflect on how you might want to incorporate some of the advice into the work that you do. We also highlight this roadmap to patient involvement in medicines R&D that was published by Jan Geisler, Bettina Rill, Susanna Leto, and Mary Uhlenhop this year. This year, I think it came out as published. We still have the unpublished reference here when they first produced it. And it gives some inspiration of all the different areas that patients can be involved and what benefits these bring. So that's also a very useful resource. Everything that you find on the EUPATI website is actually available to you under a Creative Commons license. And if you're not familiar with the Creative Commons license, you can read some more about it on our website. But just to give you a very brief highlight over it, Creative Commons is an open source copyright. It's been around probably as long as software has been developed, at least formalized as software has been developed. And the idea is that in a very formal way, but a loose way, you're able to provide information for reuse for free by people. So we've actually chosen a slightly restrictive Creative Commons license, which we call the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike license. And what this actually means is, I mean, you can read it here, you can share it, you can adapt it. It means you can reuse it and make changes to it for your own use. However, we do insist that you always give us the credit of where you got it from. We give you information on how you need to go about doing that. You have to indicate where you've actually made changes. More importantly, you've also got to share it under the same license. And just to remember, there's that non-commercial aspect, which does mean that you can't actually use any of the EUPATI material for commercial purposes. If you're unsure of if what you want to be doing with it is considered a commercial purpose, we also provide an email address at the bottom that you can get in touch with, and we're more than happy to get back to you and explain how you can use it in compliance with our Creative Commons license. There's also information about how the content was originally developed under reliable information, and this is really key to the success of the EUPATI consortium. As a public-private partnership with all the different stakeholders in play, we had to go about developing a process and a system by which we were able to create and also validate content to ensure that it was completely neutral, that it was reliable, and that we're doing it in a very transparent way, whilst being able to meet the needs of our target audience. And so you can read all about the different steps that we went through. It has been a very useful way of providing objective information, and one people may consider modeling if they're doing a similar project. And there's a brief, and I'd like to say brief, it's still quite huge overview of all of the different processes our content has been to before it arrives with you on the website. It is extensive. We've done our very best to make sure it's accurate. But as we all know, the processes do change. The way that people talk about them changes, and legislation also changes. So if you do find something that you think might be odd, amiss, possibly wrong, or even mistyped, do get in touch so that we can take action to correct that. But now on to what is the core delivery of our website, which is the EUPATI Toolbox. And one of the common questions I get from people is, I've logged onto EUPATI, where is the EUPATI Toolbox? The answer is, the main page is the EUPATI Toolbox. So the first thing you'll see is this patient education, the A to Z of medicine's development. You have a toolbox keyword search at the top, and also, if it's easier for you, you can actually browse by category. So if you're not quite sure of exactly how to search for your content, you might find some of these categories give you a bit of inspiration on what you want to search for. So you might choose to search for something within health technology assessment, and it simply pulls itself up like any other search engine with a little description of what you're going to find. So you might actually look at, say, this. You can also see some things are articles. We also have within HTA, I know we have, if I just go scrolling through it, we have a couple of videos that we've recorded. They're interviews. So content does come in different ways within EUPATI. So if we were to open up an article, you'll also find that many articles do include images, do include also presentations at the end. It appears I've chosen one that doesn't actually include either. We'll cheat and go to one I prepared earlier. So if we were to have gone into clinical trial design, notice we have various images. If you click on them, they become bigger. There's a little caption, and if you click again, it goes away, and you're very welcome to just go ahead and save the image and reuse it as you see fit. And we also provide information at the end of any article under attachments if that's something you're looking for. Often they're PowerPoint presentations, so you can just take single slides out if you want to reuse them, or even take a whole presentation on topic. So some of you might have noticed blinding just popped up for me there. Blinding is a term that's in our glossary. You can see that it's slightly a different color and also underlined. So if I just hover over that, you see the definition pops up out of our glossary so that you can easily double check if you're unsure of a word. And what you can also see is a summary of all the glossary terms that are referenced in an article coming at the end, which provide a good overview of different terminology and the way of learning. Useful thing at the end of an article is that you can go sideways into different categories of related items via the keywords used. Those of you who are familiar with how blogs work, through categorization and tags, it's exactly what we've got here. And so do use it as an added way of being able to connect different information together. And you'll also see this list of related articles. Now, sometimes these are automatically generated by the system, and you might wonder how the articles are related, and the answer simply is the computer thought they were. But sometimes you'll also see, for example, we have a series of articles that go through 10 steps of medicine's development, step 1 through 10, and you'll see the rest of the steps listed as related articles, so it's very easy to continue on the process of a multi-part article. We also have, in some areas, we have fact sheets, which are summarized information available in a Word format. Where possible, we've tried to use open source formats, so not things like PDFs that lots of people have trouble editing, and it does make it easier for everyone to copy. One of the ways in which you can go about reusing information, I mean, you've seen we have PowerPoint presentations available for reuse. We know that some people want to use our content to retrain and to run webinars, to run workshops, to run short presentations of their own needs. And though there isn't yet a full presentation index for the website, one thing you might look at is what we call the mini courses or the mini course starter kits. And these represent profiles of different types of patient involvement along the process of medicine's development. And so if we were to click on, let's take data safety monitoring committees or DMCs, we can see all of the different topics that a group of us got together within EUPATI and said, actually, this is the content that we have, this is probably of what's necessary to know about if you're looking to get involved in this or run a training on it. And so we've actually already done the hard work for you and provided links to all the different topics that we address within the EUPATI Toolbox. So if we, for example, we could click on phase 2 trials, and also maybe we want to look at statistics. So we'll load both of those. And they take us straight into these articles with the information that we need. And we can also look at the statistics one. We try to make always some simple summaries, and we divide all of our content up in a Wikipedia format with these indexes at the top of the page. And what you'll also find within the mini courses is some of the content we consider to be core material. Sometimes there's optional material, but then we also have presentations on many of the topics that we address above, and they're all available for download, an easy place. So if you simply click on them, they'll start downloading in PowerPoint format, in PPTX to be precise, and that's all available for reuse. We will eventually also have some quizzes. These will be adapted from our patient expert training course. As you might imagine, we don't want to completely publicize all of the quizzes because we also use them for assessments as part of the patient expert training course. And as much as we trust our students not to go searching the internet for the answers or sharing, people do look for the easy option. So we just make it that little bit harder for them and not provide it openly. And we also do link into other resources, for example, the ECRAN James Lynn video, which is an introduction to clinical trials. If you've never seen it, it's very fun. I highly suggest that you go and look at it. And with all of our videos, we do try to provide closed caption subtitling where possible. If we've managed to, there's also audio in different languages. At the bare minimum, there should be subtitles available in the different languages that we support. So do go looking for those. And with Vimeo, you can simply watch it here, or you can go to the Vimeo website and always link back to it. And you obviously, within Vimeo, you can also go ahead and download the video content to use it offline. As we all know, you don't always have a solid internet connection whenever you're running training. So those are the main areas of the toolbox. You know, obviously you can always, if I jump back to the beginning, you can search by keyword if we wanted to look at, I don't know, blinding. It's always a interesting topic of how it's addressed in different areas. And the system will do its best to match what we have in our system. It'll always match firstly by the title that we have, then by the little summary, and then it'll actually go searching down on an article level for how often a word occurs. So we also have the glossary term comes up, double blind comes up. But you also start seeing it coming up in things like bias. And you can see from this example that the word blinding doesn't actually appear in the title or in the summary text, but it will appear during the actual article text. So I'm going to stop there and hand over to Julio for some practical examples of how you might adapt some of the content. And if you have some questions about the toolbox and what can be found there, how you go about getting there, please throw them over to Tamas and we'll address them into a question and answer session. And just also a reminder in the top right hand corner, if you do struggle with the way that our website is presented, we do provide some tools that can change the size of the text and also the contrast within our website without having to use an external plugin. though I will openly admit that the dedicated plugins for, I guess, accessibility of websites are much better than what we can offer, and also much more up to date. So with that, I hand back over the control of the screen to Maria, and or Maria can take control back from me, shall we say, and we can continue. Over to you, Giulio.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much. I suppose that Maria, who's pulling the strings in the background, has already set up the presentation for Giulio. So you take it away, Giulio.
Thank you very much, Tamas, and thank you, Matthew, for this wonderful overview. So, yes, as Tamas already introduced me, anyway, my name is Giulio Maria Corbelli. I'm a member of the European AIDS Treatment Group. I was diagnosed with HIV in '97, so my patient, myself, and I've been working also for the EUPATI project as a member of the editorial board. And I will try in this 20 minutes to show some example on how to use this toolbox. We can go to the next slide, Maria, thank you. As you have seen, all the materials are available on this website, and Matthew already introduced you to the search engines. Next slide. I don't think we have to go into details on what the EUPATI Toolbox is, because partially this was explained by Matthew, and also because I guess that most of you are familiar with this. I just want to point out that that, as Matthew said, the content in the EUPATI has been elaborated in order to be as accurate, accessible, and objective as possible through a complex process of authoring. So I think you can rely on this kind of content, but if you find anything that seems not very precise or correct, please write to us and we'll try to understand what's going on. Next slide, please. Let's start about thinking on how to use the starter kits. The starter kits are a group of tools, of resources that can help you prepare and run some mini courses, presentation, webinars, or whatever you need to in order to train other patient advocates in your groups. You can find the trainer's manual, which will introduce you to the starter kits with some instruction on how to use the resources and how to prepare the mini courses. The PowerPoint slide set are kind of the core of these resources, of this toolkit, because they can provide you with all the necessary presentations you may need in order to run a mini course. But there are also some guidances on how to select other EUPATI materials or other EUPATI toolbox materials in order to have a more complete resource, a more complete presentation to give to other patient advocates. Next slide, please. At this moment, there are 9 starter kits for the areas you can read on this slide. Starter kits for setting research priorities, ethics committees, data monitoring committees, investigator meetings, trial steering committees, scientific advice, and protocol design. Other starter kits will be available. Each of the starter kits contain a selection of materials that you can, as I explained in the previous slide, you can find in the toolbox. But one thing that I think is really important to understand how all these materials have been planned, have been set up, is that the starter kits are not ready-made courses modules. They are not supposed to be used as they are. They must be adapted to your needs, and you should try to use them in order to build up your own presentation that could address the needs of the audience you are targeting to. Next slide, please. All this area try to address some of the topics which are listed on the right side of this slide. Those topics are the ones you can find also in the search the search box on the EUPATI website. So this is how they are connected somehow. And you can find both the core slide deck and additional links and resources for each of this topic. Next slide, please. So let's suppose you want to run a mini course for your organization, and you want to use our toolbox to prepare this mini course. What are you supposed to do? What should you do? So first, you should understand what is the duration of your training. Of course, it is completely different if you are going to have just one presentation for 1 or 2 hours or a full day training course. You must understand what are the objectives and the theme you want to address. Which topics are really essential to be covered, or which ones are only optional. This choice should be also made based upon the learning outcomes you want to reach with this activity. What are the expectations of your target audience? What do they want to understand through this mini course? What are the capacities you would like to develop and to build for your target audience? This is really important because based on the outcomes, you should prepare the best mini course to reach this objective. Based on these basics, you should prepare the content. So understand how in depth you want to go, how complex you want your course to be. Also, of course, based on the baseline knowledge, so to say, of the audience you are targeting. And then you can identify the material you want to use to prepare your course. Please do not forget also to take care of the logistics about the course. Do you need a projector? Do you need microphones? Do you need some flip charts or technology, anything that could help running this mini course? And most importantly, the person who is going to run the mini course should familiarize himself or herself with all the topics, because questions of any kind can come up. There's no problem answering, I have no answer, I don't know the answer to this question, but it can be useful and important also to get prepared and trying to understand all the other collateral topics that can be involved during the presentation in your mini courses. Next slide, please. Okay. Matthew has been very comprehensive and very good in explaining how to find materials from the EUPATI Toolbox. You can also access the Toolbox demo video, which is accessible on Vimeo. This is a very useful explanation on how to navigate yourself in the EUPATI website. The most important thing to know is that most of the presentation of the slide set can be found within the articles, usually at the end of the article itself, at the bottom of the page. Next slide, please. One thing that is very important, as I said earlier, all the material should be adapted according to your needs. So you may need to do a new slide, for example, within the presentation you can find on the EUPATI Toolbox. These are very simple and basic suggestions on how to do that. Please always use the format and the font size, the fonts, and the background and the colors we are using for our toolbox. If you do so, you will have something which is appealing, which is good to be looked at, and also you can share it on the EUPATI website in order to make it available for other people who may find it useful. As Matthew said, another very important thing is always to refer to the Creative Commons license correctly. In the next slide, we can go a bit in depth on that. Matthew explained what a Creative Commons license is. Here you can find some examples on how to refer to it in your presentation. This is also present in the trainer's guide, so this is something really easily accessible through our website. Next slide, please. Okay, so the materials which are available on the EUPATI Toolbox have been shown by Matthew, and there is the starter kits, all the material you can find on the Toolbox. We can discuss about how to use the content and some very brief legal stuff on that. Next slide. So far, we have we have 7 starter kits and an 8th one coming very soon. And the topics addressed in the starter kits are those you can find in this slide. So information and consent in trials, protocol design, medicine safety, health technology assessment, ethics committees, data monitoring committees, setting research priorities, and community advisory board is something should come up very soon in the next days or weeks. Next slide, please. For each of these starter kits, you can find some various kind of materials. You can have a video, as Matthew showed earlier, presentations on PowerPoint slide set, images which are within the web articles, and in the future also quizzes will be available in order to make your presentation also more interactive. Next slide, please. As Matthew already explained, you can find all the materials by searching on the website, both on the search the toolbox by keyword, the search box, or browsing the toolbox by category, as has been shown. Next slide. A good suggestion can be next slide also. Can be to search the material using also the Google search engine. So if you simply type within Google EUPATI and the term you want to find, Google will easily access exactly the pages on our website, on our EUPATI website, presenting the materials on that term that you are searching for. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are some examples of what you can find, for example, searching through Google. Next slide. This is a very interesting and important part of the materials you can find on the EUPATI website, and which can help you making your presentation or your webinar mini course or interaction with the audience more alive, so to say. On the website, you can find some patients involved case reports, which are narrative about the experiences from other patient advocates about specific topics or areas of activity. This can be very inspiring in many ways, both because they are part of the real experience of some patient advocates, so they can be of inspiration for you too, and also because they are trying to translate into the real life what are all the messages we are trying to give in the EUPATI toolbox. We are trying to translate how this information can have a real impact in the real life of patient advocates. So I strongly recommend you to visit this part of the website because it can be really interesting. Next slide, please. As I said before, the most important thing is to adapt all this material to your need. Next slide. You can do it in different ways. The general use is to always refer to the Creative Commons license, as I said before. Next slide. And also Matthew explained it very well. Just one small legal stuff about the use of the EUPATI logo. The EUPATI logo is to be used just within the EUPATI activity. for the purpose indicated in the EUPATI. But if you are uncertain about how you feel you may need to use the EUPATI logo and you feel uncertain whether you are allowed to do so or not, just send an email and we will reply you as soon as possible and trying to explain how to do all these things. Next slide, please. Oh, let's go into some example on how to use this, how to set up the mini courses and how to use the toolbox. This is an example from the cancer area, but this is just to explain and to help you understand that if you are going to run a training for a specific therapeutic area, from a research perspective, all therapeutic areas are kind of verticals. There is not just one area, but they can be articulated in several and different subgroups. For example, you may have the common cancers and the rare cancer, and for each of these topics, the relevant organization may be of help and maybe the one you want to interact with, for example. Next slide. Try always to include in your mini course and in your training activity the very basics of the research and development life cycle for medicines. So try to explain any step of this life cycle. You can use the EUPATI illustration in order to make it more understandable, and try to, if you are going to address some specific topic, try to put it into the context of the whole research and development life cycle. So, for example, if you are going to understand whether a medicine which is in the pipeline, which is under investigation in a phase 2 trial, is responding exactly to the expectations of the patient, it may be useful to explain that this medicine is just in this part of the life cycle. So it has been gone through the preclinical phase, for example. It is now under investigation, and if the expectation will be met, then it will eventually go into the phase 3 trials and so on. This can help the audience understand all the process and try to be more interactive. Next slide, please. So any disease area also has its own development pipeline. A specific compound can be more or less interesting also compared to the others which are under development. I think that this is a very good way to try to explain the development of some parts into all the context that you should be giving. If you don't know what are the drugs which are in development for your disease area, you can get advice from a clinician or from someone who is more expert than you, other patient advocates also, and try to collect this information. For example, in the HIV field, we have a yearly pipeline report, which is very useful in order to understand what's going on in the research area for the treatment of HIV. Next slide, please. Medicine development is not something which is done by just one institution, one company, one organization. It takes several stakeholders to interact during research and development of a medicine. So it is important that you also try to explain who are all the stakeholders who are involved. Some research studies, for example, may be run by pharmaceutical companies, others are run by academia. There is also the interaction with the regulatory agency, which may go with a green light or red light for some trial. It is important that you explain all the who is doing what in that disease. Industry also can be a good partner in order to understand what's going on in something that is not very accessible from by the general audience. Next slide, please. So another important and final part for this kind of mini course is to try and give your community all the tools they may have to go more in depth, to follow up and learn more about what you've been presenting about. There are other resources on the EUPATI website that can be accessed by the people in your audience. You can give some example. There are also other sources you may find interesting for this. But what is important is that if a person is interested in knowing more about what you are presenting, he or she should be provided with the useful links and tools to know more. Next slide, please. So the mini courses are, can cover many parts of the research and development for medicines. You can find a PowerPoint presentation about setting research priorities to dissemination and communication about medicine. All this pathway can be covered by the material. Just identify what you are interested in and try to find the right resources to be used. Next slide. Just to give you an example, we used, for example, we as EATG used this example to prepare a collaboration with the CML community and helping them to set up their own community advisory board, which is now running very efficiently. We used the EUPATI materials to run a training about this, which was in preparation of a meeting with different meetings with different companies working in this field. And I think this was a very successful experience that could be also replicated in with other organizations. Next slide. So, some conclusion. Please make heavy use of the EUPATI Toolbox illustration, starter kits, and whatever whichever material you find interesting on this website. But connect this material to your drug development pipeline and to your situation about reimbursement, access, or whatever. Adapt this content to your need. Work with other experts to get the facts right also. If you have any doubt, any question, please come back to us or other EUPATI alumni on how to run this course. And build your training and plan and advocacy program, and I wish you all the success about that. I think I finished with that. I'm happy to take some questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Giulio. Fascinating. I wonder if you have from the audience any pertinent questions that you would like to raise in connection to both presentations, or any suggestions perhaps. There have been a number of questions that I answered while you two were speaking, and most of them concerned the sharing of this particular webinar or the slides related to this particular webinar. Both the webinar and the slides will be available to you. The webinar will be shared on the EATG and the EUPATI websites, and the slides in a PowerPoint format will be available, or rather, sorry, in a PDF format, will be available on the EATG website as well, for you to look at and to try to follow up on whatever happened. And I can see one person who raised their hand wanting to speak. This is Axel here. Axel, shall I give you the floor? I think this is the easiest if I unmute you. Go ahead and ask your questions. Axel, you're online now. No, you're not. Okay, so this is not working for some reason. Then I will give the word to Merete.
Yeah.
I can see that you also raise your hand. Go ahead.
Oh, you can see my name. I was a little uncertain how it worked. I'm just curious about if we want to use, first of all, thank you so much to both Matthew and your presentation. Very worthful. We are going to implement or using our national models in Denmark very soon. And I'm a little bit curious about when we want to adapt to our national needs. The images or the PDF are not always so clear to use. Is it possible to get the PowerPoint format, or isn't that possible?
I think, Matthew, you are probably best placed to answer this one.
Sure. So we don't use PDF for any of the toolbox content for exactly that reason. With the images, if there is a translated version available, obviously we've created these using desktop publishing software. So if you were needing to edit them, we do have the source files available. You'd have to get in touch with us, but you would need something like Photoshop or Illustrator to change it. However, if you're from a country that supports that is supported by a language supported by EUPATI, for example, yeah. Denmark, Danish is coming. Most of those images, although we've not uploaded them yet on the website, are actually available in Danish translation as an image. So we could provide a link to those ahead of time if you had a timeline limit. Otherwise, if you can wait until the end of December, you'll be able to download them from the website straight away. But nothing should be in PDF on the website. The exception to that is if it's a slide related to a presentation we've given as a webinar, and those are by intention as PDFs and not PowerPoints, and that's because they've not been through a EUPATI review process, and so we don't release them under the same copyright.
Okay. So if the images are not sufficiently clear, will there then be an opportunity to get a better version from you? Because I could see it just when Julia was showing the Jan Geisler's very, very good overview of where patient can be engaged during the R&D process. It was not really clear on I mean, if people want to read what is on the slide, it's not so easy.
Merete, I sent 2 slides to you that you requested yesterday, so yes. It should be, It should be in your mailbox now. Sorry, Matthew, for speaking over you, but
jump in there. I mean, any of the images that were used in the presentations that we have on EUPATI, those images have all come from the website, and a full resolution version is available. You just need to go back to the article that the presentation came from, and you can download that in, I think it's 1000 by 800, which would be enough to print on an A3 page without a problem.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Do you guys have any other questions from the attendants? Once again, there was an interesting question about reporting an illness or a disease to EUPATI. Please note that EUPATI does not do any disease-specific work. So we do not develop contents for specific illnesses or the treatment of specific illnesses, but rather EUPATI is concerned with the whole spectrum transversally of medicine's development, research and development, and clinical trials. So it's more like about the overarching methodology and a knowledge pool that is there for all of you to understand how it works out there, and in order to be able to acquire the language of medicine research and development and clinical trials, thereby empowering yourself to do work in your own specific disease areas. However, we will not, we don't have the expertise, and also we don't have the objective of going into specific illnesses separately. Also, we don't have the resources for doing so. But you should approach your patient organization locally or the EUPATI platform in your country, if there is one, or just try to ask us whether we can relay you to a patient organization that does specific work in that given disease area. And with that, if you have no other questions, I would like to end this webinar at this point. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and especially a huge thanks to Maria Dutart, who took care of all the logistics in the background, to Matthew May, our first speaker, and Giulio Maria Corbelli, our second speaker. And please note that the webinar will be uploaded to our websites, and the slides will also be available in PDF format from tomorrow. And thank you very much once again for your kind attention, and all other remaining questions should be sent to us by email. Thank you, and goodbye, everyone.